Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another quick episode of the My Generation podcast. A little bit of a different one today. In between main podcast episodes, I am going to be doing a very quick, short review of Spider-Man Far From Home. I've literally just got back from the cinema, having watched the movie. If you enjoy these style of audio recordings, podcast episodes, not sure really what to call this yet, just a review series, then let me know and I'll try and keep them up in the future. So this is, as I said, spoiler free. Not going to be going into any spoilers for Spider-Man Far From Home. It was a really, really strong movie. There's some really good bits, some really interesting choices as well. But I'm going to be going through just a few categories and keeping it as vague as possible, as I want you to go in to the movie as knowing as little as possible, because it's the best way to consume any movie, I feel, and this is no different. So, firstly, going over Peter Parker himself. Great acting again from Tom Holland. I think his scenes with Mysterio, where they're just sat talking, are some of my favourite in the movie. He bounces off him quite nicely, especially during their introduction. There's some really, really great stuff between the two of them. Tom Holland's character, he's put into so many different situations. I really like how in each new scene he's just growing and adapting, and some people have said that this might feel like another coming-of-age story, in the same way that Homecoming was, but I feel that they both offer unique things as well. This isn't just him going through the same problems that he did in Homecoming. The first half of the movie is very much more focused on the high school life of it, him going away, travelling on holiday. That really works. I don't feel like it overstays its welcome, and he keeps it interesting. He doesn't make it boring, and there's certain places that they go to. They go to so many different locations in this movie, and each one is explored and adapted. I don't feel like they just brush over the surface of each location. They actually dive deep into them. They don't just show you one establishing shot and then it's just another location. They show you some of the quirks of each individual place, which is really nice and a genuine surprise as well. Next, moving on to Mysterio's character. Very, very interesting character. I think Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is amazing in this movie. Probably is my favourite part of the movie, is his performance. Really enjoyable. He really keeps this movie ticking over and is always moving and adapting. And as I said, his conversations with Peter are very, very strong. Other side characters? The side characters surprised me in this movie in a very strong way. The side characters like Ned, there's also teachers from their school trip, there's Happy, there's MJ, Aunt May. They all get more time on screen than I was expecting, but in the best way. They all actually manage to have their own little section within this movie, do their own things. They all feel very fleshed out, especially from coming on from Homecoming. None of them feel like cartoon cut-out characters. There's a lot of depth there, despite the fact that they are side characters. They work and influence them, and they even make some interesting decisions throughout the movie. But next is the comedy. So I think the comedy really does work for some parts. There's some scenes that I genuinely found so funny. The way the film opens is very interesting piece of comedy, and I absolutely really did enjoy that. It doesn't always land, and when it doesn't land, I feel like it really did tank a little bit. But when the comedy's working and breathing and bouncing off all the characters, it really, really does work. So next I just wanted to briefly touch on predictability, because a lot of people will be wondering, because certain Marvel movies in the past have been quite predictable, certain Marvel movies have been completely unhinged, off the rails, unpredictable. And I think this movie balances that quite nicely. There are lots of twists and turns in this movie, and they vary. There were twists that I never saw coming in this, and I know that a lot of people have explored what possible twists could be within this movie, but there are genuine twists in this that I really, really wasn't expecting, or that I saw anyone expecting, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. So moving into favourite and least favourite parts. Again, favourite part of the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, probably also the different Spider-Man suits we get to see. We get to see a lot of variety in this movie, and the locations are a big plus, the side characters are a big plus. My least favourite parts are there are some very interesting character decisions. people make decisions throughout the course of this movie, and there's a handful of them that I don't feel are actually as true to the character as I would expect, which kind of slightly broke the immersion for me, because there were certain decisions I feel were made that just served the plot and forced the film down the funnel it wanted to go. And we were sort of always pushing towards a certain avenue with this. So I really didn't enjoy certain character decisions and I would really question. Another thing I haven't really touched on is the action itself. Some of it really, really good. Some actually of the action I felt was a little bit repetitive throughout the movie. You certainly get the spectacle. There's a lot of amazing, amazing visuals in this movie, especially surrounding Mysterio with his hand movements and what's going on with the green around him, as you would have seen in the trailers. Beautiful stuff. And more of that in the movie. But towards the end, I feel some of the action gets a little bit repetitive, and some of the various parts throughout the movie wasn't as clever as I would have hoped for this scale and what's going on. I just wanted a bit more complexity to the action. And having come off the back of recently seeing the third John Wick movie, I feel like I set quite a high standard within my own head of what action should be like. So just overall thoughts. It was a good movie. It was strong. Definitely not one of my favourite MCU movies. I enjoyed it about as much as I enjoyed Homecoming, but for very different reasons. I'd say that it's either probably a 6 out of 10 for me. Maybe a 7, pushing. I'm quite harsh in my ratings as well, so anything above a 5 I would say is a good movie that I could watch again. But it's either a high 6 or a low 7, just because of some of the character decisions that get made throughout the movie. Not the strongest. Also, the soundtrack felt a bit lost in the background, but it has with certain MCU movies in the past, so I'm not going to really let that affect it. So again, lots of good stuff to take. Are you going to watch Spider-Man Far From Home? Let me know in the comments. Try and keep the comments spoiler-free for now, because the movie has only just come out, so we're going to try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Rating is 6 or 7 out of 10. So now, to close off this episode, I thought I'd post out on the Facebook asking quickly, just before I went into the film, if anyone had a favourite MCU movie that they wanted to mention. And I got some really nice comments. So, firstly, I wanted to throw out a big shout out to Connor Jenkins, who we are going to be featuring on the podcast, not this Thursday, but next Thursday, who said his favourite superhero was me. And I found that was a very nice comment. Thank you for getting in touch, as always, Connor. I think he's just a bit excited because his episode of the podcast is very, very nearly out. And again, if this is your first time listening to the My Generation podcast, please do consider subscribing. We do weekly podcast episodes every Thursday at 6 o'clock with Kent locals in England talking about a huge variety of different topics. And in fact, this Thursday, we are talking about people's responses to social media. And that's going to be a great episode. So that should be out in 2 days' time. Really looking forward to bringing that to you. And yeah, Connor Jenkins, he'll be on talking about climbing, rock climbing for the CCCU Society. And again, I'll put a link to that in the description. But other comments that we got with people's real favourite MCU movies. Stuart Palmer messaged in saying Spider-Man has always been my favourite. All 3 versions of him are great, but Tom Holland, I have to say, is the best. Favourite superhero film, I think, would have to be Captain America Civil War or Avengers Infinity War, although another favourite would have to be Iron Man 3 for how they handled Tony Stark's character, making him experience mental health problems and not being able to rely on having the suit for everything. Also, the Mandarin plot twist was great. Next is Daniel Johnson, who messaged saying Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The way it blends animation styles, characters from different cultures is phenomenal. I thought it would be cheesy and played up, but every character feels so natural and real in a way most animation can only dream of. Plus, the use of real comic book panels and hand-painted frame inserts is amazing and creates what is definitely the most visually beautiful comic book movie around. I grew up with the original Spider-Man trilogy, so it takes a lot to beat that, and Into the Spider-Verse did that. Now I'm just going to cover those 2 comments quickly. Stuart, great choice. Captain America Civil War seems to be up there for pretty much everyone. And you've taken something very interesting away from Iron Man 3, because I know a lot of people who are more outside the MCU will just see them as big superhero movies, but you've taken the mental health aspect away from Iron Man 3 and making it more about the human, which I thought was really cool. It's a really good way of looking at it, and you've taken something very special from that movie. And with Daniel, another Spider-Man movie, and I think that actually the whole idea of having different cultures and character styles, a tiny bit of it is within this movie when you have all the different suits that he's in. I wish they'd actually done a little bit more in Far From Home, maybe with what the suits can do, but there's some definitely really good choices for his suit. And our last comment is from JD Brick Studios. You can follow him on Instagram. He does Lego Marvel photography. I'm going to leave out Infinity War and Endgame, so it has to be Captain America Civil War. I really liked how they focused on the effects of the heroes and grounded it, showing their reactions, and plus the action was fantastic, and I loved how Cap's arc progressed in the movie. Great stuff. Character arcs, big thing in this. I feel like actually in Spider-Man Far From Home, Spider-Man grows all the way throughout the movie, and going forward I'm really quite still excited on how the MCU is going to move forward as a whole. I don't know what direction it's going to move in. I think Phase 4 is opening up a lot of doors. I feel like some doors have also been closed, but some have really been opened, and I'm very excited to see what way they go. Sorry again for being so ambiguous with what we're talking about, as we're trying to keep this spoiler-free. I'll probably do some other movie reviews on movies that have been out for years, and we can talk about spoilers quite openly, just to mix things up a little. But let me know what you think of this style of episode as well. It's a little bit different. It's something I want to try as well with more current things, because the podcasts are pre-recorded, they're not time relevant, they're very open, we're very big on discussions. This is very different. This is just us talking about Spider-Man Far From Home. And I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below about the movie. I'll try and address all comments at some point throughout a future podcast episode, and if we get a lot building up, I might put a dedicated response podcast out just about this. But if there's films that pique my interest or anything, or pique yours, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to talk about them. And I still obviously want to just quickly punt for the next podcast episode, where I'm going to be talking about social media, people's responses to the very first episode of the My Generation podcast. We've been going for almost a month now at the time of the recording of this episode, and so much more to come as well. Really excited for this. We're also going to be later down the line, I believe it'll be the 8th episode of the My Generation podcast, which will be coming out in a few weeks. We're going to be talking about films. The episode's already recorded and ready to go. We talked about different films that changed people's lives. And if you want to see that episode or hear that episode, please consider subscribing and turning on post notifications so you never miss an episode every Thursday at 6 o'clock, where we talk about film talk. We're going to be doing films, loads of films. I think in that episode we cover at least 15 films, quite generally, but 15. And today we've just taken the time to focus on one very new movie. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd rate it probably a very high 6 out of 10. I want to know what you rate it, especially compared to my ratings. I might have to explain my ratings in a bit more detail in a later review if you enjoy this format as well. Have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the movie when you do go and see it, and I will see you in the new podcast episode in just 2 days' time. Have a great day.